Welcome to a series of what I am calling short sermons. Everybody likes short sermons, don't they? Well, these are sermon recaps instead of sermon previews, in which I'll just give you a shortened version of what we talked about on the preceding Sunday. So here we are in a beautiful fall setting. The leaves are just beginning to turn. Today was the first day I noticed some splashes of red coming out, and we have a beautiful setting here in this area where my dog is also wandering around. It's okay to be off the leash where we are. It's a very nice remote area. So we can talk a little bit about Deborah. Deborah is the second of our women prophets that we're dealing with this month, looking for ways in which they can inspire us even today through their examples of faith and leadership. We first meet Deborah in Judges 4, just when things had truly hit rock bottom for the people of Israel. They had made their way under Joshua's leadership into Canaan, but had failed to subdue the occupying Canaanites. Well, it was their land after all. And they raised up judge after judge who was unable to help them devise a strategy to overpower the Canaanites, mainly because the people of Canaan had what Judges 1 calls chariots of iron. So they had these vehicles which were virtually indestructible, and which were produced using the process of carburization, which the Canaanites had developed, in which iron, which was well known in the ancient Near East at that time, could be fashioned under very high temperatures to produce carbon steel. So not only were the Canaanites fierce, but they had vehicles that made them virtually indestructible. So into this rock bottom situation of idol worship into which the people had fallen comes the prophet Deborah as a judge. Now, what made her special? So she is described in Judges 4, verse 4, as the wife of Lapidoth. Well, that doesn't tell us much, and there's really no other biographical information about her. But when we start looking at the words of that verse more closely, we find a lot about Deborah, or that we can imply may have been facets of her personality. So first of all, wife of Lapidoth is not really an accurate translation. That word is better translated as woman and not wife, even though almost all the major translations give us the word wife. So why would a prophet, first of all, why would a prophet be called the wife of Lapidoth? That's not a very distinguished way to describe a prophet, perhaps, especially since Lapidoth was unknown. There is no individual that was known at the time by that name. So let's say she's a woman of Lapidoth, using that better translation of that particular Hebrew word. Well, there was no place called Lapidoth. So she's not a woman of Lapidoth, a person, or a woman of Lapidoth, a place. What is she? So in looking more carefully at the word Lapidoth, it could be implied to be the plural of the word lapid, which is the Hebrew word for torch or flashes of lightning. So this tells us that Deborah may well have been a fiery, flashing, a very creative and inspiring person. So what did she do that made her distinctive in the history of Israel at this darkest of times in their history, where they had fallen under failed judge after failed judge into abject idol worship and evil? Well, she came up with a winning strategy, which is what judges were supposed to do. They were administrators, not presiders in a court of law. They were supposed to develop strategies to beat the Canaanites and take possession of the land, but none had been able to until Deborah came up with a brilliant strategy. Of course, God was speaking through her, so she was listening to God. It was God's strategy that she communicated, taking 10,000 men under the leadership of Barak, son of Abinoam, a great warrior, to Mount Tabor. And from there, the strategy played out with some very gruesome and surprising plot twists and turns worthy of Only Murders in the Building, if any of you watch that show. So read Judges 4 and 5 to see how this plays, Judges 4 really, to see how this plays out. So in that way, under the leadership of Barak, the Canaanites were overwhelmed and their leader was destroyed in a horribly gruesome spectacle. And Deborah then presided over 40 years of peace. So her example shows us the inspiration of someone who was not afraid to assert herself, to proclaim what God was telling the people through her, and to create a context in which her leadership and God's words could be played out, and then a strategy set forth for the people to take possession of their promised land and for peace to then follow. So who are we in this? We are, let us suggest, people of Lapidoth also. We are flaming torches set alight by the fire of love that comes to us through Jesus Christ, in proclaiming what we know to be God's kingdom, the kingdom of love, the kingdom of peace, the kingdom in which we are called to step into those shoes of leadership that Deborah did in whatever context we have in our lives, to be that blazing fire of God's word for the benefit of all his people. So let's take our inspiration from Deborah today as people of Lapidoth, and we look forward next week to hearing about the prophet Huldah. Peace be with you.